explaining the Franco-Mexican War. In the 1820s, Mexico had gained its independence from Spain, but wars with Texas, the United States, and Spain would ruin them. During the late 1850s, Mexico had two governments fighting their war of reform. A liberal government in Veracruz headed by Benito Juarez, and a conservative one in Mexico City headed by Miguel Miramon. Eventually, the liberals would take Mexico City, and they would inherit a country divided and a lot of debt which they could not pay. Meanwhile, over in Europe, Napoleon III attempted to gain the glory that his uncle had. By then, he had already defeated the Austrians and the Russians, moved into North and West Africa, and he now wanted to turn Mexico into a puppet state. Mexico had refused to pay its debts, giving Napoleon III a way to declare war on them, and, lucky for him, the United States was in a civil war, meaning they could not interfere. In 1861, along with the British and the Spanish, who both wanted their debts repaid from Mexico, the French would sail to Mexico. They planned on occupying Veracruz until the Mexicans paid off their debts, but the French brought reinforcements. The Spanish and the British would both realize Napoleon's intentions, and, not wanting to be involved in the situation, would leave. With their reinforcements, the French would push west towards Mexico City. They came to the city of Puebla and launched an assault. The French were fought back by a much smaller Mexican army. The Mexicans would win this battle, and, since the battle took place on May the 5th, May the 5th, in modern day, is celebrated in Mexico as the holiday of Cinco De Mayo. This battle would end up delaying the French assault on Mexico City by an entire year. In the United States, the Union looked almost certain to win the Civil War, and Napoleon III, not wanting the United States to intervene, increased his army size in Mexico. Many of these new troops would be troops from the French Foreign Legion. In February of 1863, the French would launch an assault on the heavily defended city of Puebla once again. However, this time, things would not go so swimmingly for the Mexicans. The Mexicans in Puebla would surrender, and the city would be taken. The liberal government would flee from Mexico City just before it fell to the French on May 31st. Mexico would be declared an empire by the French, and the throne would be offered to Archduke Maximilian of Austria. Maximilian was the brother of Emperor Franz Joseph of Austria. The throne had been offered to Maximilian in an attempt to repair relations with Austria after they had been severed during the Italian Wars of Independence. The liberals were pushed further and further north, but the imperialists still could not gain public support, and still heavily relied on the French. Maximilian's relatives, the monarchs of Belgium and Austria, also sent in troops in an attempt to help Maximilian crush the liberals, but this would fail. In 1865, Bismarck began leading for the unification of Germany, meaning that Austria and France could no longer send troops over to Mexico to help the imperialists defeat the liberals. Then, the Confederate States of America would collapse, meaning that the United States could now help the Mexicans. Juarez would gain thousands of weapons, and many veterans from the U.S. Civil War would cross the border to help the liberals. The French went on the defensive, but with the threat of American intervention, high desertion rates, and the loss of around 60 million francs per year, the French position was unmanageable. So, Napoleon III announced the gradual withdrawal of troops from Mexico. This process would become intensified when the Prussians would crush the Austrians in a war. With the new concern of this Austro-Prussian War, the French became more concerned with Europe than they did with Mexico. This would allow the liberals to march south and take more cities before the French withdrew from Mexico City altogether. Maximilian would also withdraw from Mexico City and would march an army to Querétaro. But Juarez's much larger army would follow them and lay siege to the town. In May 1867, Maximilian, along with Querétaro, would be captured, and Maximilian would be executed by firing squad, bringing the Mexican Empire to an end. The war would be brought to an end, and the Republic of Mexico would be restored. In conclusion, the Franco-Mexican War would be started by Napoleon III's ambitions of wanting to be like his uncle, Napoleon Bonaparte, but this would fail due to the fact that there was conflict in Europe that France had to focus on. Thank you for watching this video on the Franco-Mexican War.